continuing our Jesus flipping the script. And I still love that I can get all these kinds of images. And so we have an image of Jesus flipping the script. And so, we're in this series, and where we are situated in this series is he's on his final journey to his destiny. This is his final time of ministry. This is where everything has to be laid on the table. Like, this is it. This is his chance to finish off his teaching to the apostles and the other disciples that are following him. And so this is crucial time. And he's really going to turn the world upside down. He's just overturned gender power. And with it, he really overturned world power. Jesus is he's giving up worldly power status. He's saying, give up worldly power status as a man. And you give that up as you enter into marriage. Sorry, give me something to answer. There we go. And he says, but he makes this giving up power as a man into marriage, he makes it voluntary. And disciples are like, who can comprehend this? How are we supposed to do this? I don't know if we can do this. And he says, I'm not going to require it of you. In the Jewish understanding of the day, they believed that marriage was mandatory. They further believed that out of marriage, offspring was mandatory. If you had a marriage where offspring wasn't happening, that was one of the causes. You could divorce your wife and try to marry another woman because you were seeking that offspring. Jesus traces marriage back to a simple act. He goes beyond Moses that they bring up to him, and he simply makes marriage as this creates a single human unit. That's what marriage was begun as. That's it. And it wasn't ordered that everyone has to do this, and it's not ordered that you have to have kids or else you better divorce this one and go to someone else. That's not how it was. Jesus essentially says, you don't have to give up your place of world power by getting married. The marriage is a choice. But then Jesus immediately encounters some kids, and these kids are the embodiment of powerlessness in the world. They were considered to be economic burdens. They held no legal status within society. They were dependent simply upon the good disposition of others to help them. And Jesus declares the kingdom of heaven belongs to these. These who are powerless own the kingdom of heaven. In other words, what Jesus is actually saying is the powerless in the world, they are the substance of heaven. They are the ones who are what heaven is made of, and they own heaven. This is what heaven is all about. This is it. And do you see there's a picture being painted by Jesus here as he tells his disciples, you can give up your power as a man to enter into marriage. That's optional. But now we're going to move to the powerless kids, and this is really what it's all about anyway. And so there's a subtle shift from giving up power within marriage to simply giving up power in the world at large. That's it. Give up power. You don't have to give up your worldly power to join someone in marriage, but now Jesus is saying, but the kingdom of heaven is made up of the ones who've given up the power. So if you want to be the substance of the kingdom of heaven, you've got to give up power anyway. If you want to join the kingdom of heaven, even if you choose to remain single, Jesus is saying, you're going to give up your worldly power. Because to seek and to exercise power over others in the world, that's not of heavenly substance. A church seeking to hold power over everyone else, that's not of heavenly substance. For a church to claim we're of the kingdom that Jesus says is these kids, the powerless ones. This is the substance of the kingdom. For the church to say we're of the kingdom and yet not be powerless kids, it's not of the substance of heaven. And the people who we spoke of last week, that they're doing the work of making it on earth as it is in heaven. It was the work of binding and loosing, and we looked at the word binding and how it's bandages. You are bandaging an injured world. You are forgiving and erasing the debts in the world that cause there to be more injury, more wounds as people fight. Ultimately, what Jesus has shown is to be part of the church is to be a powerless child in this world. But then that's where the real power starts anyway. And we'll get to explore that another time. But the bottom line, what we find here is to seek power over others in this world is to not seek the substance of the kingdom. To hold power over others in the world is to not be the substance of the kingdom. In the patriarchal society, masculinity, that was the symbol of world power in Jesus' day. To be a man automatically by default put you in a place of power, no matter what anything else in your life. And we have the eunuchs for Matthew 19:12. See here, there we go. See if this will work. There we go. We have the eunuchs from Matthew 19:12, and Jesus says these are the ones who don't hold a default place of power in the world. And then he adds on, right after the eunuchs, he adds on the kids. The eunuchs and the kids are parallels of not having world power. They don't hold power in the world, some by birth. They were born without power status, some by force. They've been made powerless status. Their power has been taken away from them. And then Jesus says, some by choice. They see what I'm saying here. The material of the kingdom. The kingdom is owned by the powerless. And they see this. And so they choose to give up the power in this world for the sake of the kingdom. Choosing because actually worldly powerlessness is the substance that makes up the kingdom. And Jesus does something with the kids that I want to make note of. I didn't get a chance to note it last week. Jesus lays his hands on the kids before he leaves. In Scripture, all the way back to offerings in the Old Testament, there's this interesting study of hands. To lay one hand on something was to claim ownership of it. To lay two hands on something was to begin to make a designation of something. Jesus' first miracle is to lay a hand, singular, on a leper. The one that no one else would own. They're like, nah, we just own this guy. He is impure. He is out. Jesus' first miracle was to lay a singular hand, the hand of ownership, to say, I'll claim you. I'll own you. Jesus uses one-handed key moments in Matthew to show ownership. I will own what no one else will own. The two-hand act of designation only happens once in Matthew. And it's right here. He identifies what makes up the substance of the kingdom. It is these kids. And then he lays his hands on them to designate them as the substance of the kingdom. He designates them as the owners of the kingdom. From giving up power, we moved last week on to giving up merit. A rich young man comes to Jesus, and in this man, he really encapsulates many people who are viewed in their own eyes and in the eyes of the world as having a lot of merit. They have a lot of merit with God, and culturally, this still continues today. There are those who tie worldly measures of success to having favor with God. They judge how good you are with God based upon what you look like in the world. How good do you look in the world? And one of the ideas, even to this day, is how much money I have shows how much better I am with God. So just like the disciples and the eunuchs and the kids, they were symbols for much larger demographics. Those who hold worldly power and those who are powerless and of the kingdom. The rich young man is a stand-in for a much larger demographic. He stands in for those who view themselves and are viewed by others to hold great merit and value. They're worth more than others. Even more, it's those who believe themselves and those who others look at and see how they are to hold great merit with God, as measured by the world's standards. And the young rich man was believed to hold a lot of merit with God, especially compared to lepers and beggars who had lost favor in God's eyes. The young man asked Jesus, "What is the thing that I must do to inherit eternal life?" Divine life is basically how that would be interpreted. The concern is not so much about living forever for him, but there's a divinity to the life joined with God. And he's like, what do I need to do to have this divine life? As I pointed out, details are deliberate. Parchment was scarce back then, so you spent your words wisely. And the Greek here notes that this man is young. Why do we care? Why do we care that this man is young? We get to note that in the world's eyes, he had won at life with what we will be told soon is a vast wealth. Because we know he's young, we learn that not only has he won at life, he even excelled at the pace at which he won. He won early in his life. This dude's a stud. This dude's a winner, man. Everybody looks at this kid and they're like, he's young and he's already wealthy. He's been blessed years before other people figure it out. This kid is seen as a superstar. He's a superstar with the amount of wealth he holds and the speed at which he has achieved it. I believe that in this kid's question, what must I do? What's the deed that I must do to get divine life? I believe that in his youthful and his opulent pride, he may have actually wanted Jesus in front of the crowds that were following Jesus to simply respond, look at you. Obviously, you've already merited divine life. There's nothing more for you to do. You've arrived. You're a stud. You're so favored by God. That's the answer he wanted. But Jesus cuts to the chase and he calls out the kid's impossible deed. The deed the kid could not do. The deed that we all have in all of our lives. And the kid walks away sad because the kid had a lot of merit. A lot of merit in the eyes of the world. And he could not give it up. It would be like asking Selena Gomez to pull up her Instagram account. And she looks at, I think it's like 600 and some million followers. And they'd be like, I want you to delete it. Just delete it and never open the app again. Well, we left off last week with our favorite guy, Peter, deciding to speak. Peter says what many say today even, when they look at their ability to choose worldly poverty, while this young man couldn't choose it. Peter says, Jesus, we've done what he couldn't. We are better than him. We have more merit. We've given up our stuff to follow you, unlike him. So what do we get? What does it merit us? The flaw of the young man's question to Jesus, as we considered last week, was that he wanted to know what deed was he to do to merit himself divine life. Peter's working from the same flawed premise. And he's saying, we've done that deed. What does it merit us? I'll work on a merit system, and I've done the deed. So what do we do? What do I get? And in Jesus' response, I believe that the evangelical church at large has made a mistake. We read as Jesus says, well, Peter, let me tell you what you've won behind door number 3 because of your merit. You've merited one of 12 thrones upon which you will get to judge others. We often read this as a grand thing, and we take it literal. That Peter has merited this incredible thing. He's merited glory, and he's going to sit on a throne and judge, but the problem here is that the context is actually anti-merit. It's anti-merit. Jesus' response should be pushing it back against Peter's duplication of this false premise of the young man. So I would encourage you, we don't have time today, but I would encourage you to work on that further yourselves, or talk to me later if you want to explore this further. But was Peter really told you're going to get one of 12 thrones and you'll get to judge others like you want to do now? Was Peter awarded with something due to his merit? Or is there a different way to understand this? And we don't have time, but I would encourage you to consider that. For now, though, we come to the end of Matthew 19, and I'll offer it in Greek with a bit more detail than what our English provides us. Those of preeminence, who are the greatest in the world, they will be the least in the kingdom of heaven. And those who are seen as the most insignificant will be foremost in importance. On the heels of saying this, Jesus tells a parable of the kingdom of heaven. Jesus says in Matthew 20, verse 1, "For the kingdom of heaven is like a landowner who went out early in the morning to hire some laborers for his vineyard." We'll just stop here. Who's the landowner? Who's the landowner here? It's God. This idea of a vineyard and God being the landowner traces back to Isaiah. And the landowner, he is about to go out and he's going to find some workers for his vineyard for the day. Notice that the landowner goes into this as the hardest worker of anyone. The landowner has been at this for more than a day. He's going to hire some people for the day, but he's been at this for more than a day. It's proven by the fact he even has a vineyard that's ready to hire some workers for one day. And his work of bringing in workers precedes the workers actually going to work themselves. They're waiting for work. The vineyard's already at work to go find them. As we go into this story, we have to consider what is the motives. What's the motive of the landowner? Or motives? Is his motive actually related to the vineyard at all? Is his motive really related to the harvest? Perhaps his motivation is actually to simply employ the unemployed. Perhaps his motivation is to transform the hearts of people because he's going to deliberately create a crisis later in their hearts. Maybe his motivation is to give his money away and lose money. Maybe his goal is not even profit. His goal is to lose money. We can gather this because we're going to see later that he overpays people, and it's not shrewd or smart business to pay someone more than you have to. So why is he so free with his money? This endeavoring to lose money by the landowner, it kind of seems like a fitting possibility. This story is in contrast directly after the story of the rich young man who couldn't stand to lose his money. So the rich young man couldn't give his money away to the poor. Here is a landowner who says, I'll give my money away. Is he really concerned about profits? Is he doing what the rich young man couldn't? It seems the landowner is using his vineyard to actually work upon the workers more than he's even concerned with the vineyard and with profits. The landowner is even seen as almost eager to lose money when he's going to pay a 12-hour wage to someone who only works 1 hour. So we keep our thoughts in mind as we continue with the rest of the story. The vineyard owner, he goes away at dawn and he finds some workers there, already eager to work, waiting at dawn. They're waiting for a job, and he hires the first group of workers. He goes back with them to his land. Then he comes back again to look for more workers. At 9 a.m., he comes back and he says, oh, there's more workers here. Let me hire you. And he hires them and he goes away. 3 hours later, he comes back at noon. At noon, there's more workers waiting. He says, I'll hire you. And he takes them. He repeats this at 3 p.m. He hires the ones he finds standing there. Then at 5 p.m., the day's almost over. He goes back again and he finds the people standing idly, doing nothing. And he asks them, why have you stood idle all day? And they tell him, because nobody's hired us. So he hires them. He hires lazy liars. He hires lazy liars because every time this landowner is going back to the marketplace was culturally, we can picture it as the Home Depot. Day workers will stay at Home Depot for you to hire them and take them to go do work. The marketplace was the Home Depot parking lot. After the first time that he hires workers, he's going back and he's finding workers. He's finding groups of workers who are more and more lazy at the same place. He hires all the workers that were there at dawn. They were the most eager, and he hires them. He goes back at 9 a.m. and he finds new people there. He finds the ones eager for work, but not quite eager enough to be there at dawn. They got there by 9. And he hires them. Each successive group of workers that the landowner is hiring, they're lazier than the last as they came to seek work later and later in the day. By the time he's hiring the ones at 5 p.m., they aren't there because nobody would hire them all day. If they'd been there all day, the landowner would have already hired them. They were there at 5 p.m. because they were the ones who the night before they were shutting down the bars at 2 a.m. And then they're going home to continue the party. And finally, they crawled out of bed to go look for some work by 5 p.m. because their wives were getting on their case. We got to pay the bills. The last group of workers are the deadbeats. The last group of workers are the deadbeats. As marriage is in view, the rich young man and the workers at dawn, they're the most meritorious. It is only one of the most meritorious groups that is explicitly called laborers in their hiring. In this passage, only one group is called laborers, and it's the first ones at dawn. The rest of the groups are called idle. And this last group, the deadbeats, they merit nothing but scorn. They merit nothing but scorn as Peter and the disciples are listening to this. If they and the rest of the idle groups really needed work, and they missed the dawn hiring, why didn't they go out to look for work? Why didn't they work harder to find work? Don't wait for it to come to you if you missed the morning hire. Go look for it. But they don't. They sit idle and wait to see what happens upon them. To the first group that this landowner hires, he agrees to pay them what is fair. Many Bibles will say that he agreed to pay them a denarius. That was the wage for a day's work back then. So he said, I'll pay you what's fair for a day. Okay, cool. We started at dawn. We're going to work for a day. Sounds good to us. They head off. The next group of a bit lazier people, this is a 9 a.m. group. The next group, the landowner, he agrees to pay them what in Greek is called dikaios. This is the Greek word that we use to speak of righteousness. We can say the dikaios of God, the righteousness of God. It's also the word for just or justice. So he says, I'll pay you justly. I'll pay you righteously. The next two groups represented the more and the more lazy at noon and 3. It says the landowner goes back and he does the same thing to them. So they too are told that they'll be paid what is just. They will be paid what is righteous. Do you see where this is going? We're going to learn a lesson on how God's righteousness and how God's justice works. The third group, it expands the conversation a little bit. And for them, we don't even read that they are promised a righteous wage. No wage is given to them. He says, why are you here? They say, nobody's hired us. He's like, well, go work on my farm. No deliberations over wages are given at all. They have no promise of justice. So now the day ends. The day ends and the title for the landowner changes. In the King James Version, they do rightly gather from the Greek. He's now called the Lord of the vineyard. So he moves from landowner to being this Lord. He's raised up with this other Greek word. The owner causes a crisis. The owner of the vineyard causes a crisis when he dictates in what order the workers are to be paid. He doesn't simply say, okay, it's time to pay the workers, and as the workers come in randomly, they get paid. He says, this is the order I want you to pay them in. If he wanted to be known simply for his generosity, he could have actually started with the dawn workers first. He could have started with the dawn workers first, and by the last people show up, and they get to see that they got paid what the first ones did. Oh, you're so generous. Generosity could have been shown in the opposite order that the landowner decides to pay the workers in. Instead, the owner, he pays out in a manner that draws everybody else's attention to his seeming unfairness. He says, pay the deadbeats first. And it's going to draw everybody's attention to his seeming unfairness, especially the first group, the dawn group. We think about this. Every group but the first group were lazy. They were idle. And they didn't work a full day. Those who got there at noon may have seen the deadbeats get paid a full day's wage and been like, that's not fair. But when they show up and they've worked half a day and he pays them a full day's wage, I'm not going to complain about what they got because I love what I got. So everyone is grateful except for the dawn group. The jealousy of every other group is quieted by being grateful for what they got. The group that complains is the group that was the most eager, the most disciplined, the most meritorious. We read in Matthew 20, verse 10. Now, when the first came, they thought they would receive more. But each of them also received a denarius, 1 day's wage. When the first workers came, those who had worked longer and harder, they came to get paid what they thought would be more, and they only got paid the same. Do you hear Peter's question here? We've done more than the rich young man did. We did more work, so we get paid more, right, Jesus? The heart of their complaint comes out in Matthew 20, verse 12. You have made them equal to us. You have made the deadbeats equal to us. Everyone who's more lazy than us, you made them equal to us. The complaint isn't you lowered us to them. The complaint is not you made us equal to them. The complaint is you've elevated the lazy and the deadbeats. You valued them as much as you valued us. The less thans have been raised to our level. The happiness of the first workers is dependent upon less happiness for those who are beneath them. To the first workers, to the dawn workers, if the lazy in the kingdom gets more, technically if the lazy in the kingdom gets the same as what I got when I wasn't lazy, then I've somehow received less, even though I haven't. It's really the same pay, but somehow mine is diminished when someone else gets it I don't think deserves it. The point of the parable is not just God's amazing love that is enough to go around. But the point is our response to the amazing grace that will be given to others. And to the upset workers, the owner opens with this word, friend. Despite themselves, these dawn workers who feel jealousy, who don't get it, they're no longer laborers, they're friends. And the owner answers this key question in verse 15. Don't have it on a slide. In verse 15 he says, friends, are you envious because I'm generous? The first workers, they want to be bookkeepers on who deserves what and how much. In context, who merits how much pay? In this story, we learn that God's justice is not dealt with by bookkeeping. God's justice, he says, to the lazy workers, he says, I'll pay you what is righteous. I'll pay you what is my justice. And that is generosity, not bookkeeping. Due to time, we're going to pick this up next week, and you'll hear the kids coming back in, or at least Nate coming in to close us in worship. I invite you to pull this answer. This answering or pushing back on Peter's merit seeking. It's pushing back on the consideration of what Jesus really means by telling Peter that the 12 disciples have merited 12 thrones. And they will merit standing in judgment over others. So pull it into those considerations. But meanwhile, after looking at what is the substance of the kingdom, after then exploring this story, I believe these are some of the questions that we may face today. Here's the questions I take from this. The first, why is goodness in this world actually very often an occasion for anger? Another question, why do I find it hard to rejoice for good things that happen to other people? And then a final question that came to my head in this is, why do I spend time calculating how I have been cheated and diminished based upon the good that others are receiving? If they receive the same as me, but I don't think they deserve it, why do I look at my thing and say somehow this is now less than what it really is? Nate's going to come up and close us. As we enter into worship, I invite you to weigh in worship the God who on his journey to Jerusalem is becoming the most, he is bringing things to light. He is sharing more and more explicitly what is happening with his kingdom. And in this story, he says, here's how my righteousness and my justice work. They work not with bookkeeping, but with generosity. And all the way back to the beginning of Matthew, we consider that Israel, they thought they were going to be saved against others. And in Matthew chapter 1, it says, Jesus came here to save us from ourselves. So the lesson is, don't look and bookkeep against others. Consider how much you've been given. Consider how fortunate you are. God's a God of generosity. Equal generosity beyond what actually anybody deserves, or at least what I deserve.